And we're back one more time.
Hi, it's the Horror Guys.
I'm Brian.
And I'm Kevin.
And as usual, we've got 4 movies for you. Last couple of weeks, this is the 4th time. This is bonus episode number 4, otherwise known as podcast 199, where we are taking our material from our bonus newsletter and making a little bonus podcast out of them.
It's still horror movies.
That's
the best. That's the best part about it.
No,
it's still horror.
Musical theater here. It's all horror, guys.
Very little musical theater.
What do we got this time?
Well, we got a Chinese film called Incantation, an oldie called The Skull, and another not quite as oldie, was it? The
1
Island
year
of
later.
Care. Yeah. And a VHS Viral, another installment in the VHSs.
Oh, you know if they put the word viral in there, it's got to be good, right?
Well, no, not this time around. But we'll talk about more of that.
Okay, so again, this podcast goes out through Substack, through our horrorbulletin.com newsletter. And if you want to get this every week, just sign up. It's free and easy. Put your email in there. You'll get the 2 emails every week, one with our regular reviews, one with our bonus reviews. And every other week there is a bonus podcast. I don't think we're still completely decided if we're going to continue doing this every other week, so let us know.
Yeah, well, let us know what you think.
Yeah.
Do you like hearing our mellow voices and other extra podcasts?
And Substack does
There's
have an
just
app
too much for
that you
you.
can just listen to just on your phone or wherever, just like your podcast app. It's all automatic. It's pretty cool.
Very easy.
Yeah. Of course, our regular podcast is over at horrorguyspodcast.com, and we do that every week with all our usual stuff on it. It's pretty cool. We've got
Coming
almost
up on
200
the
episodes.
bicentennial episode. Next time. 200,
That's right.
200,
200.
200. Yeah.
That's a lot of horror movies.
Yeah. Have you read any good books lately?
Yeah. No, but I've written one.
Oh, even better.
We just released The Horror Guy's Guide to the Horror Films of Roger Corman.
Interesting.
Yeah, he directed a whole bunch of movies in the 1950s and 60s and 70s and
He's a
80s and
prodigious guy.
90s. Oh, yeah. He's produced over 500 films.
And still producing.
Still going,
Still
yeah.
in the business, yeah. And all kinds of stuff behind the scenes and been in some movies, small roles in movies here and there.
I'd say probably half the cheap movies on Sci-Fi have his fingerprint on them somewhere.
Well, he cranks them out and makes money.
Oh, yeah.
So, that's what the business is about, and people keep coming to him for more because he keeps, the bottom dollar always works.
It's all about business with him, and he does make the money.
Yeah.
He once put out an entire studio-ready film in 2.5 days with real actors and real sages.
Known for improvising, working cheap, working fast, and making money.
They're good enough.
Yeah, his movies always haven't been great, but they're good enough. A
lot of them have stood the test of time, and some of them weren't very good when they came out, but it's a mix.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's available over at horrorguysshop.com or go to horrorguys.com/books, and you can find it there. Paperback, ebook, whatever you want, we've got it. All right, and of course, you guys are listening to the Horror Bulletin bonus podcast. Every month, we put out the Horror Bulletin reviews, all of them, in a print magazine, Horror Guys Monthly. And
that's where you can read all the spoilers about the brand new movies, if you want to.
Yeah.
The ones we don't spoil on the podcast.
We've had a ton of new movies the past month or two, and we've been trying not to spoil them too badly. But the written reviews, they go all the way. They got the full synopsis.
Yep, you are warned.
All right, so let's wipe out, let's delete, let's rewind, let's record over the VHS Viral from 2014.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh, we got directed by Justin Benson, Greg Bishop, Todd Lincoln, written by T.J. Kimfel, David White, and Marcel Sarmiento, stars Patrick Lowry, Amelia Ayers, and Celia K. Milius, and a bunch of other people because it's an anthology. Hour and 21 minutes.
Cast.
All right, so as we just said, this is another VHS tape-themed anthology. The VHS series had the VHS from, I think, 2009 by memory. VHS 2 from a year later. This is the third one, VHS Viral, and then there's a VHS 99, and I'm not entirely sure. I may be forgetting one.
No, I think there's just 4.
Okay, well, this is the last one that the last one for us to do. We've seen the other 3. Go to horrorguys.com and search in VHS, and the other reviews will come up. But this is the last one that currently exists. Segment 1. It's called Vicious Circles. Well, there's this guy named Kevin, not our Kevin.
Hello.
Not him.
Different Kevin.
Kevin watches his girlfriend Iris. She complains because he's addicted to videotaping things. And there's a police chase outside the apartment, and he rushes outside. He watches a cop get run over. There's some kind of maniac on the loose.
Driving in circles out there.
Right here on the very first segment, I ran into my biggest problem with this one. There's banners and signs and things that says it takes place in 2013 and 2014. Mm-hmm. There's literally signs in the background, some holiday thing going on in 2013. Did you use many videotapes in 2013?
No. And yet they've still got the VHS thing going in this one.
That whole thing with the static and the
staticky
recording over and the blinky,
glitchiness,
yeah. There's no VHS in 2013.
And all through this, there's a lot of digital use. There's GoPro style cameras.
You can literally see
phones.
GoPros and cell phones in use. Yes,
and he's got his cameras are digital, and and yet they're still doing the VHS style of. Yeah.
Now, VHS 99 that came out a couple of months ago, that happened in 1999. That's retro.
They made it retro.
That's real. Yeah. This is just kind of
retro without being retro.
Illogical. Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Well, anyway, not much happens in segment 1. That's sort of the wraparound story. Segment 2 is Dante the Great,
which was my favorite of them.
Mine too. It's also, I think, one of the shorter ones.
Yeah. Yeah.
The police interview Scarlet, the assistant to Dante the Great, a magician. He recorded everything up until his arrest. Just 2 years ago, he was starting to learn magic, but then he came into possession of Harry Houdini's cloak. With it, he could do real magic. Before long, he was doing big shows for big money. Exclusive stuff for rich people.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes the cloak gets moody and refuses to work. Yes, it's hungry for blood. He just covers someone up with the cloak, and it feeds from them. Scarlet explains that her boyfriend Clay went missing after Dante found out about him. Wonder what happened there.
Well, we find out because Dante records all the murders.
Eventually, they arrest him right there on stage in the middle of an act, but he immediately escapes because he's got magic.
Mm-hmm. The real stuff.
Scarlet swears to the cops that Dante uses real magic. Well, the whole SWAT team attacks, and he wipes them out easily with his magic. He does fireballs and stuff.
Mm-hmm. And worse, yeah.
He and Scarlet fight for a while, which eventually results in the cloak eating him. The police are still looking for Dante even today. And then Scarlet burns the cloak with the trash, but later she finds it's back.
Yeah, it reminded me of a twisted take on Doctor Strange from the Marvel comics.
Yeah, the cloak won't go away.
But if Doctor Strange was a bad guy and, the cops are trying to fight him, that would be a one-sided fight.
Very much,
and here it is, yeah.
Segment 3 is Parallel Monsters. During the chase from the initial segment, Iris calls Kevin as he chases the police and everyone else. So there's some guy in an ice cream truck. He's running from the police, and it just seems to be going in circles around town for some reason. One guy gets stuck in the back door of the truck and gets dragged for miles. Elsewhere, a guy in a room full of technology powers up something that looks like a high-tech doorway. When it opens, the other side is a mirror of his own lab, and he sees himself on the other side. One of the two guys crosses the border into the other guy's universe. They trade sides and check out each other's houses they agree on 15 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a portal to a parallel dimension.
Yeah.
Well, one of them is married, and the other has pictures of a satanic ritual on his wall.
What?
On one side, the wife has several other men over visiting in their hot tub, and in the other, the wife is simply asleep. The two universes are definitely not exactly the same. There's something going on outside, so Alfonso runs out to see. There's a giant satanic blimp chanting as it flies overhead. That's what we need, more giant satanic blimps.
So his parallel is Satan world, basically. Yeah.
Outside, he runs into the two men that were inside earlier. Then they both have the same name. They chase after him, and their eyes glow. Back in our world, the alien Alfonso gets around. He goes up and sees the sleeping Marta. He pulls down his pants to show a giant fanged penis.
Oh, my.
Oh, there's more to this than just,
Uh-huh.
Well, back in Satan world, the normal Alfonso sees the same thing. He runs back inside and finds the other Marta, who has something really nasty where her vagina ought to be. He runs for the interdimensional gate and gets home. He is then stabbed by the other Alfonso, who is killed by the satanic Marta on the other side.
Yeah, I think she was just jealous, wasn't she?
He wasn't doing it. He was supposed to be helping her with a ritual over there, and instead he was dumb and didn't know anything about it because he wasn't the same guy.
Yeah.
And when he came back, she thought he was some kind of traitor or something.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that makes more sense.
With everyone back where they're supposed to be, Earth Alfonso tries to get up after being stabbed. He screams for his Marta's help, and she comes in with a knife, stabbing him repeatedly for what he did to her a few minutes ago. I guess he raped her with his
giant fanged penis. Yeah.
Well, segment 4 is called Bone Storm, and this one I thought was just too long, too dumb, and too annoying.
Well, the boys were dumb and annoying.
It went on for too long.
And
there was no
story.
story.
For too long. Yeah, not much. Yeah.
Well, the circling ice cream truck is still going, and Kevin pursues him to rescue Iris from the guy inside. Somehow or another, the circling helicopter causes a bunch of Mexicans to kill each other. Did you get that with the whole Mexican group?
Well, I don't think it was the helicopter necessarily, but it was, the
They all got paranoid because the police were coming or something.
Yeah, the truck was causing a disturbance in the force,
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
We cut to another time when some kids are recording themselves doing skateboard tricks. They all decide to go to Tijuana for fireworks and drugs, but mostly to try this isolated tunnel one of them heard about. They get there and find a bunch of sacrificial-looking things and pentagrams painted on the ground. One guy gets cut and bleeds onto one of the pentagrams.
And when that happened, I said, that probably isn't a good thing.
No.
And it wasn't.
A strange, witchy-looking woman suddenly appears. She tears off one of the guy's arms. More strange cultists suddenly appear, surrounding the skateboarders. The guy with the gun kills a few of them, but soon they kill all 13 of the cultists. But then the dead all get up and continue the fight.
Yeah, and at some point they're just like living skeletons that they're fighting.
Back in the police chase, Kevin finally catches up with the ice cream truck. In the back are video monitors. Iris comes on one of the monitors and tells Kevin to hit the upload switch. He does. Now all these terrible videos can all go viral, which probably means something, but it's left vague.
Yeah. They pull back and show a view of the city, and all the lights in the city are starting to flicker off and on.
Yeah.
Yeah, bad things.
All right, well, that was a waste of an hour and a half.
Oh, well, no, not that bad. But...
It was easily the worst of the series.
Okay, yeah.
You agree with that one?
I do agree there, yeah.
The Dante the Great segment was really good.
Yeah, it was.
But it was also the shortest of the bunch. Parallel Monsters was a little on the dumb side.
I thought that was interesting.
Oh, it was interesting, but how realistic was that?
Oh, like the rest of it was
well,
realistic.
Okay. Yeah. Bone Storm was nothing but annoying teenagers and shaky cam, and there's no real story there other than they fought some monsters. Mm-hmm. And that one, I think, was the longest segment.
Unfortunately.
Yeah. The segments all took place in 2013, and several times you could see them filming with phones and GoPros, so why was everything still cutting in and out with static like a VHS recorder? Bad, bad, bad.
I didn't harsh on it as much as Brian, but yeah, it wasn't. It was the weakest of the four.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know, of all the modern anthologies, with the exception of, I think VHS 2 I liked the best. Most of these did not do much for me. We watched too many shorts on our own, I think.
We're too spoiled.
Yeah, we watch good shorts all the time. We ain't got time for these bad ones.
That's the thing. There's so many super good shorts out there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that takes us to 1966's Island of Terror. Directed by Terrence Fisher, written by Edward Mann and Al Ramson, stars Peter Cushing, Edward Judge, Carol Gray, and Eddie Byrne. Hour and 29 minutes. Trailer in the show notes. Spoiler free, the effects are pretty cool, the acting is good, and the story is pretty great. Well, the effects are pretty cool for the time period.
Yes.
They're going to be kind of laughable now.
A little bit.
This one should be better.
Kind of puppety. Yeah.
Yeah. This one should be better known than it is. The horror guys both give this one a strong thumbs up, and Kevin remembers being freaked out by it when he was a wee lad, and it's still pretty creepy.
Yeah, it's one of those movies I was so young that I don't only remembered bits and pieces of it, but I remember it, vividly still, the bits and pieces I did. But I could never piece together what movie it was that I was barely remembering. And then we saw this and say, it was Island of Terror.
Yeah, I see things like that once in a while that I vaguely sort of half remember. I know I saw this one at I had seen this one before, but I didn't remember much of it.
And it didn't freak me out like it did probably when I was a kid. But,
Well, you're not 4 anymore.
Yeah.
All right, well, what happens?
Well, 2 men load a chemical shipment for Dr. Phillips onto their truck. It's an isolated island. They don't even have phones there yet. One man complains about how lonely the island gets. In the lab, the doctors talk about irradiating nuclei. All kinds of sciencey talk.
Lots of talk, yes.
Yeah, technobabble. Yeah. If they are successful, they may have the cure for cancer. One scientist suggests waiting for the other international labs, but another is eager to get started. So what could go wrong? Credits roll.
And as the guy talks, he does his, it's normal talk, sciencey talk, and they say, let's get started. And then just for a half a second before the credits roll, you get a visual glimpse of all of them laying dead on the floor. If you blink, you'll miss it. But something has gone wrong.
Yeah, bad science. Well, Ian Bellows is walking alone at night. He hears something strange in a cave. He goes in and screams. Well, the man's wife goes to the police and reports that he's 3 hours late, just not like him at all. The sole policeman, Constable Harris, goes out looking and finds Ian's seemingly empty clothes in the cave. Wait, no, it's not empty. The body's in there, just what's left of it is strange. Well, the cop goes to see Dr. Flanders first and relays what he saw. Ian had turned into mushy jelly. Ew.
He's like a rubber mask that has been deflated.
Yeah. Landers looks at the body and says all the bones are gone. And he thinks it could be a contagious disease as they, handle the body and walk around without masks or washing their hands or anything visible.
Different times.
No precautions whatsoever. Well, Dr. Brian Stanley is the most eminent virologist in London. That's Peter Cushing. And soon Dr. Landers pays him a visit. Well, he's never heard of a disease that makes bones dissolve, but he's intrigued. So Dr. Stanley brings in Dr. West, a bone specialist. Tony Merrill is there with West, and she flirts with all 3 of them. All of them, Tony included, take a helicopter back to the island to look at the body. Well, the 3 doctors go to the lab and start an autopsy. They find microscopic punctures all over the body, and some kind of enzyme could have been introduced that way. They need better facilities, so they go out to Dr. Phillips' place there on the island. There's no answer at the door, but they sneak in through a window. And Dr. Stanley almost trips over a squishy body on the floor.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. Well, the lights keep flickering, and Landers mentions the island has been having trouble with their generator. They find the lab, and there are dead men everywhere. This was the nuclear lab, and whatever it is must have started there. Meanwhile, a farmer notices that his horse is all melted and squishy. He goes to Constable Harris about it, and he, in turn, goes to find the scientists. He goes into the room marked test animals, and a tentacle grabs him from behind.
You could say the animal tested him.
Yeah. Meanwhile, Dr. Landers goes to the police station, but the constable is gone. Landers runs into the farmer, and so he learns about the dead horse. All this comes to the attention of Mr. Campbell, who is the head of the island. West tells Tony about what happened in the lab, and she doesn't want to be left alone, so they take her along. Well, Tony sees a creature crawling on the car while she's waiting. They return to Phillips' lab and find both Harris and the tentacle creature. No, several tentacle creatures. There's bunches of them. Well, Landers tries to kill one with an axe, but it feeds on him instead. Their hides are too tough.
They look like soft rubber squishies to me, but I guess they're hard.
An axe didn't work on them. The creatures divide simultaneously, and they also go inert for a while, which gives them a brief moment to escape. But they're dividing, multiplying 2 by 2 by 2. That's bad news. Stanley and West and Tony all run outside. They barely get away as more creatures approach the car. Tony is upset and has to be sedated. Mr. Campbell tracks down West and Stanley, and they fill him in on what's been going on. Campbell agrees to gather all the islanders together in the town hall in an hour. Stanley tells the assembled group about the bone-eating creatures, and at the speed they keep dividing, there will be hundreds of them by tomorrow, and soon thousands, and then the end of the world, because there'd be millions of them. So they got to do something. So they shoot a creature with shotguns. That doesn't have any effect. They try a firebomb. Little Molotov cocktail doesn't work. Dynamite doesn't work. They do, however, learn that the creatures can climb trees.
Look up. What?
What? Ah! A creature comes in, saying they found a creature dead on the beach next to Philip's half-eaten dog. Well, the dog had been irradiated in an experiment, so Stanley thinks the radiation must have poisoned the creature. And there's plenty of strontium-90 at Philip's place, so they go and get that. They arrive at the lab, put radiation suits on, go into the safe room, get some strontium-90, which they luckily have an injector gun.
What is the significance of strontium-90? They call it by name numerous times. Is that something that was well known at the period?
It might have been, yeah, the radioactive element.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the significance of that is.
Yeah, radiation. It sounds sciencey.
Yeah, it does.
Mm-hmm. Well, outside, one of the creatures grabs Stanley's arm, and West cuts off the arm with an axe to save him. They drive back to town and inject all the cows with the radiation, because they can't inject the creatures directly, so they're going to bait them. West and Tony have time for a kiss before the creatures arrive in the village. The creatures do arrive and eat the cows, and then they start dividing again. And the silicate creatures keep on coming. They swarm over the outside of the building. Then the lights go out. The creatures start breaking in through the windows, and the villagers panic. There's pandemonium. It's quite a chaotic scene. And they barricade themselves in the doctor's office as a last stand kind of thing. West gets an injection ready for Tony. He'll kill her himself before he lets the creatures get her. But the creatures start going limp and die. The strontium-90 did poison them. It just took time. Well, in the morning, Tony's helicopter returns and takes her, West, and Stanley back to the mainland. All the silicate creatures have been verified dead. Except, remember those international labs that were mentioned at the beginning? In Japan, one of those labs seems to have developed the same problem. But Japan is an island too, so that's okay, right?
Isolated island, yeah.
Well,
what could happen?
well-
There's nobody in Japan, is there?
Well, bad things. And what about the other internationals that aren't? Because it was plural mentioned.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, other than a little panicking toward the end, Campbell and the villagers were surprisingly cooperative. Yeah, he was like the leader of the town, and and if this was a modern movie, you know they wouldn't be cooperative.
Or that calm, or, yeah.
It'd be like, this isn't real, it's fake news, we'll do it my way. This is the way we've always done it around here, and this is the way we're going to do it, and then they'd all die. Yeah, but anyway, they're British, so maybe that helped too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Follow the leader.
British in the mid-60s, yeah.
Stiff upper lip. And
staunch and all that, yes.
keep calm and kill the silicates.
Yeah.
Well, Peter Cushing gets a few funny lines here. You know, he's usually completely plays everything serious. Here he
Usually.
was kind of a cowardly wimp, and it was kind of funny.
Yeah, a little bit.
We should take any risk necessary. Oh, but not for me. But it's mostly played as a serious scientific investigation story. The creatures here are really well done and alien, at least for the 1960s. The acting is fine, the music is suspenseful, and the pacing is excellent. I'm really surprised it's not better known. We both liked it quite a lot.
Mm-hmm. I'd consider it a classic.
Yeah. That takes us to what's next.
The Skull from a year before, 1965, which was directed by Freddie Francis, written by Robert Bloch and Milton Subotsky, stars Peter Cushing, Patrick Wymark, Christopher Lee, and Jill Bennett. And the runtime is an hour and 23 minutes. There's a trailer on the show notes.
Spoiler-free.
Cushing and Lee together again.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the set pieces and interesting point of view shots elevate what should have been a mediocre tale to something pretty good. And as always, it's fun to see Cushing and Lee working together. As you might guess from the title, a skull plays a central part, and it's a little far-fetched and weak in the story.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
This is a turn-your-brain-off movie.
Yeah, but the direction is so good, and they're so good together, it makes it thoroughly watchable.
Well, we begin in a cemetery in the 1800s. Or maybe it's even earlier than that, I don't know. The men there are digging up a grave. One man opens up a coffin and cuts off the head of the man inside. He then leaves carrying a small package. What's in that bag, do you think?
It's about the size of a head.
Well, Pierre, the phrenologist, returns home, opens the bag, and finds a woman in his bathtub, but he quickly throws her out. There's work to do. He pours acid on the head that was in his bag, and soon there's nothing left but
A skull.
credits roll.
Now, that's somebody who's dedicated to their job and their work. He comes home and there's this naked woman in his tub.
Go away, naked woman. I need to boil a skull.
Yes, I've got things to do. Now, and she's wanting, she's coming on to him.
Oh, yeah.
She's not, indignant that he walked in on her or anything. She's like, oh, come on in.
Oh, there's no time
We'll
for
have
that.
fun.
I have a skull to wash.
Yeah.
Well, we come up to the modern day, or the 1960s at least,
Yeah.
and we open up at an auction. Christopher Maitland and Sir Matthew Phillips are competing for items at an auction. There are 4 demonic statues for sale, and Phillips has deeper pockets. He gets the figures by making a big jump in his bid. Afterward, Maitland asks why he paid so much more than they're worth, and Phillips doesn't really even know why he wanted them. Something just came over him. Later, Mr. Marco comes to see Maitland. Maitland's wife doesn't like Marco, but business is business. He's brought an old book about the life of the Marquis de Sade. It was rumored that the Marquis was into the occult and died with a hatred of all mankind. Well, the book is bound with human skin, and Maitland writes books on the occult himself, and he's a collector of the macabre, so he's very interested. Marco mentions that he may have another item tomorrow night. Marco goes home, and we see that he has the skull in his closet. The next night, Marco returns, and this time he brings
The skull.
along with him. He wants £1,000 for it.
Which is a heck of a lot of money in 1965.
Yeah, it is. It's not just any man's skull. This is the skull of the Marquis de Sade. We get a flashback to Pierre and his fate. As the executor of Pierre's estate does an inventory, he throws the skull into a pile of junk, but it soon moves to a better place. The skull takes over the man, and he kills Pierre's mistress. Maitland thinks it's too expensive, and so Marco cuts the price in half. He really wants rid of that thing.
Mm-hmm.
Maitland says, well, he'll think about it. Maitland then plays pool later with Matthew Phillips, and he tells him about the skull, but can't verify that it's genuine. Phillips says, oh yeah, it's genuine because it was stolen from him. Phillips says he's glad it was stolen and advises Maitland to stay away from the dangerous skull. He believes that the Marquis was possessed by an evil that still possesses that skull today, and he thinks that the skull wanted him to buy those figurines at the auction. Well, 2 men come to arrest Maitland. They don't take him to the police station, but instead to some weird kind of courtroom. They make him play Russian roulette with a loaded gun 3 times. Maitland is then locked in a room and gassed, and he gets a vision of the skull, and suddenly he's in an apartment building. Turns out he's in Marco's apartment.
That was weird.
That was weird, and I'm not
weird.
quite sure what that was even about looking back on it.
And it reminded me of The Prisoner,
It
that
did.
old series.
Yes, it did.
Yeah, where it was surreal and you don't quite know what's going on. Yeah.
I think I even mentioned that when we were watching it. Did we just switch over to The Prisoner?
Yeah.
Well, Maitland gets the money and goes back to Marco's place for the skull. He finds a mummy. Could that be Marco? It's not. He takes the skull with him, but then Marco's dead body falls on him as he leaves.
Ah, there's Marco.
Everybody should have a mummy just hanging around in their closet.
Mm-hmm.
He hides the skull and goes home. Inspector Wilson interrogates Maitland about why he was there and other stuff, and Phillips warns Maitland that last night is just the first of several nights of rituals, and if he has the skull, he needs to get rid of it right now. He offers Maitland a protective amulet to ward off the evil of the skull, and when Maitland goes back for the skull, Marco's landlord is killed. People seem to die around this thing.
Mm-hmm. It's bad luck.
Maitland goes home, and late that night he watches the skull let itself out of the display case and take center stage on a table. It just sort of floats around.
Mm-hmm.
The book from earlier floats over and sets down next to it. Maitland is in a trance and goes outside. Over at Phillips' place, Maitland breaks in and steals one of the demonic figurines, killing Phillips in the process.
Harsh.
He places the statue next to the skull in the book. He takes a knife and goes into his wife's bedroom, but when he sees the cross on the wall, he's able to resist. Even later that night, the skull gets out of the display case again and wakes Maitland up. It's like a cat, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Feed me.
Hey.
He once again picks up the dagger and plunges it into the skull. The skull turns over an hourglass, and the knife appears elsewhere. That's not going to work.
No.
Maitland screams for Jane to come and help him, but he's trapped in the room. The skull flies from room to room and finally closes in on him. And in the morning, Jane wakes up and finds her husband stabbed to death in his bed. The inspector comes around and notices the similarities to the Marco case. They don't pay any attention to the old skull on the table.
The skull that is watching them. Yeah.
Well, the sets with all the antiquities and strange artworks are really cool here.
Yeah, they were.
I wouldn't mind having any of these rooms. Pierre's house, Maitland's study, and even Marco's apartment are filled to the brim with all kinds of weird things. You could do an anthology just on any one of those rooms, couldn't you?
Yeah.
We get a number of shots from the skull's point of view, which is both interesting and kind of a little silly. But the flying skull doesn't look too bad, but I doubt too many people are going to believe that it's real. I guess, well, there was no
Skulls
CGI
don't fly.
at the time, so I guess it was probably a real skull on a string or something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, cables. Yeah.
It's got a really small role for Patrick McGee, who we always call the dollar store Boris Karloff. Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee are the big draws here, although Lee doesn't really have much to do. Cushing does a lot with only a little material. They build up the first hour with Marco and Phillips. It was pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
But his solitary with the battle with the skull was kind of boring, actually.
Went on a little too long.
It doesn't say anything. It doesn't do anything. It just floats around and looks like a skull.
It floats ominously.
It's a skull. You should be scared. It was a weak premise with good performances. All right.
Yeah, well, that sums it up.
Yeah.
Not a classic.
So
but
there's our
tolerable.
three oldies. Well, we got a brand new film, Incantation, from 2022, directed by Kevin Ko, written by Che Wee Chang and Kevin Ko. Stars Suan Yen Tsai, Sin Tang Huang, and Yin Huan Kao, and Sean Lin. I got Sean Lin right.
You just kind of mumbled through those names.
Yeah, I kind of just did, didn't
Sorry.
I doubt the actors are going to call.
Sorry.
Hour and 50 minutes. Spoiler free. This might be a case of lost in translation, but this one didn't quite click with either of us. It's in the found footage style, mostly, and it's very well made. It's got good acting, it's got good effects, and high production values. The story amps up tension, but failed to really be that frightening to us. Maybe being a parent would have helped, as there were really terrible things happening to a child with a mother helpless to fix it. So if you get upset with those movies with sick kids, this is kind of the same thing, only supernatural.
Yeah.
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 What happens? We won't spoil this one entirely. We'll stop partway through.
Because it's so brand new.
Yeah.
We are told that intentions can change outcomes. Like a video of a train going by, you can make it going forward, go forward or backward, depending on the way you look at it.
You've seen that kind of optical illusion thing.
Mm-hmm. Is it an optical illusion or is it a reality? Well, Lee Ronan says that 6 years ago she violated a terrible taboo. And then there was a car accident, and she explains that the more you understand, the more it plagues you. Some it. We see videos of the police involved with the accident committing suicide. She shows us a symbol and tells us to memorize it. Well, we hear that Ronan is getting her daughter Dodo back next week, assuming she passes her evaluation. Dodo is very shy, doesn't really recognize her. And how do you pronounce his name? Say?
That works for me.
Okay. Say, the man from the orphanage, mentions that she often calls him Dad. It's not quite an orphanage. It's more of a foster care. I think most of the kids there, their parents were not deceased, but they were wards of the state for various reasons.
Right.
Yeah. Well, we get footage of 6 years ago from a mental institution. Lee has given away her new baby to an orphanage, or the foster care.
Or whatever it is, yeah.
Yeah. She tells them that the more you know about this deity, the more you are likely to experience something bad from it. And eventually, in the now again, Ronan brings Dodo home, shows her to her new room. And right away, weird things start happening. Power goes out, something breaks in the next room, things spill in the fridge, and there are sounds like she's never heard before. Lee checks, and Dodo is asleep in her room, at least until the screaming starts. Well, 6 years ago, Ronan, Juan, and Dom are visiting the mountains. They've come for a private family ritual, but Ronan isn't part of the family and so can't stay. But an old woman looks at Ronan's hand and decides she can stay after all. So there's a lot of hopping back and forth between the modern and the 6 years ago.
Something bad happened 6 years ago, and something bad's happening today, and somehow they're related.
And we both gradually fill in on both of them.
Yeah.
Well, more?
I think that's probably good enough.
Yeah, because weird things happen in both. You gradually find out what happened 6 years ago and how it fits in with the modern day, and there's awful things that are happening to Dodo. And
yeah. All right, well, we're skipping down to the commentary part. Ronan mentions that she's recording all this so that little Dodo can watch it as she grows up. These are not happy memories, though. So why would anybody want to watch all this horrible stuff when they get older? Hey, you want to see how terrible my childhood was? Check this video out.
Yeah.
Well, it is interesting being from China and all. There's lots of cultural influences and ghosts, but I don't think either of us really followed a lot of it.
I think we would have appreciated it more if we were Chinese or at least Asian.
Yeah.
Familiar with a lot of these cultural norms and
it's interesting because it's kind of alien.
And, different kinds of superstitions, and interesting things that we didn't quite get because we aren't familiar with those. So.
I'd imagine if you were a single parent, this might get under your skin more than it did for us. It's well made and amps up the tension as it goes. Kind of felt a little long to me. As far as found footage goes, this is one of the better made ones. It's creepy and alien, but there was a lot here that we didn't quite understand. I liked it, but I don't know that I really understood all of it.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so the skull's not so great. VHS was kind of awful.
Except for Dante the Great was really good.
All right,
really, really
it had
good.
its moments.
It had its moments. It had great
Island
moments.
of Terror we both really liked, and
Yes.
Incantation we're kind of on the fence about.
Uh-huh.
All right, well, that's our show for this week.
It is.
Stop in over at horrorguys.com or horrorbulletin.com. Check out our written reviews if you want spoilers on that last one. Subscribe to the podcasts, both of them. There's actually 2 podcasts at this point, the real one and the bonus one. And check out our books, horrorguys.com/books or horrorguysshop.com.
Buy them all.
Yeah. The more you send us, the more we'll have. Well, I'm Brian.
And I'm Kevin.
And we'll see you in 2 weeks.
See ya.